Hello, and welcome to this section on nouns. So when you first start learning English, you're often given a fairly limited definition of what a noun is. You'll be told it's something you can touch or see. But as you progress with your language learning, you realize it's also other sort of intangible things. So we now will give a more comprehensive definition of a noun and say it's something you can feel, see, taste or touch. So this section initially looks at how we can sort nouns into different categories which are overlapping. So I'll explain what I mean. So the first thing we look at is common or proper nouns. We then look at concrete or abstract nouns, countable and uncountable nouns. And these are all just different ways in which we can divide nouns into one of two groups. So we can have common, concrete, uncountable nouns. Okay, they're not exclusive. Once we've looked at this way of dividing them into two groups, we then look at forming plurals of nouns. We look at capitalization rules for nouns. We look at collective nouns. We look at pronouns, compound nouns, possessives in relation to nouns, and gerunds. And in all of these lessons, there will be information on what this particular item is, when we would use it, how to use it, and plenty of examples so you can see really clearly what we mean. This lecture in the nouns section is about common and proper nouns. One way of dividing nouns is into common nouns and proper nouns. And common nouns are people, places, things, and feelings. Some examples of common nouns of people: lady, man, teacher, pupil, children, child, nephew, niece, father, mother, grandparent. As you can see, these aren't the individual people, they're just the types of people. Or places. Again, not specific places, but general places, as in town, city, village, pub, restaurant, cafe, library, cinema, park, country, hill, valley. Things that are common nouns: taxi, car, lorry, van, table, chair, bench, apple, pear, peach, carrot, book, magazine, leaflet, mouse, cat, dog, horse. Or common nouns can also be feelings: love, hate, fear, anger, happiness, sadness, truth, trust. And proper nouns are names, places, brands, titles. And proper nouns always start with a capital letter, no matter where it appears in the sentence. There are some examples of names that are proper nouns: John, John; Elizabeth, Lisa, Liz, Betty; Susan, Sue, Susie; James, Jim, Jimmy; Robert, Rob, Bob, Bobby. And proper nouns that are places, and these again are the specific instances of places. Say Windsor Castle or the White House, so it can be a building. It can be a street, as in Downing Street or Wall Street. It can be a town or a city, as in London, Washington, Peking. It can be a country, as in England, America, China, or could also be a continent, as in Africa, Europe, or Asia. And brands that are proper nouns, for instance, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Red Bull, Apple, Dell, Microsoft, Nike, Adidas, and Puma, Mars, Nestle, and Kellogg's, Metro, Tesco, Aldi, Walmart. Or titles are also proper nouns. For instance, Dr. Brown. Now we mean the person Dr. Brown, not a doctor. Or Mr. President. Captain Smith. We mean the Captain Smith, not a captain. Or Lady Chatterley. Or Lord Mountbatten. Plural nouns. There are several regular ways to make plurals. There are many irregular plural forms. Some plurals are treated as a single item. Regular nouns, plural. There are several regular ways to make plurals, and they depend on the ending of the word. So most nouns have one particular form. Nouns ending in S, X, Z, CH and SH have a particular form. Nouns ending in Y have a particular form, as do nouns ending in F or FE. Most nouns are made plural just by adding a letter S. Some examples: one cat, two cats. One dog, three dogs. One boat, many boats. One house, several houses. One cup, two cups. And nouns ending in S, X, Z, CH or SH and SS are made plural by adding ES. And this is purely done to make pronunciation easier. So say one bus, two buses, not buzzes. Yeah, it wouldn't work. One box, three boxes. One waltz, two waltzes. Although it should be noted that quiz in the plural form of quizzes has two Z's. One beach, many beaches. And also please note that if the CH is a hard sound, as in stomach, we just add an S to make stomachs and not stomachs. One bush, several bushes. One boss, too many bosses. Nouns ending in a Y, they have two possible ways. If the letter before the Y is a vowel, we simply add an S, as in one key, two keys. One boy, three boys. Otherwise, we replace the Y with IES. One berry, two berries. One fly, many flies. And nouns ending in F or FE also have two options. If there are two vowels before the last F, we usually add an S. So one chief, two chiefs, but there again, one thief, two thieves. Or one roof, three roofs. Otherwise, we usually replace the F or FE with VES, as in one knife, two knives. But again, one safe, two safes. Or one half, several halves. Unfortunately, there is no firm rule and you just need to know which one is to be used and just remember it and you'll be fine. We now look at some irregular plural forms for nouns. And there are many irregular plural forms. Some have different plural forms. Some have the same plural form as the singular. So we look at those that have different forms. As in one man, two men. Or one woman, three women. One child, four children. One mouse, many mice. One goose, several geese. One foot, 3 feet. One tooth, several teeth. And these are just some examples. There are many, many more that are irregular in the plural form. Some have the same plural as the singular. One sheep, 2 sheep. One fish, 3 fish. One aircraft, many aircraft. One deer, several deer. One bison, 2 bison. And again, these are just examples. There are many more. Lastly, we come on to verb agreement. Normally, a plural will have a plural verb form, as in the peasants are revolting. Many roads lead to Rome. Your trousers are too tight. However, some plurals are used in a singular verb form. The news is on at 9 o'clock in the evening. Darts is a popular pub game in England. And mathematics is not always hard. These singular forms is not all of them, there are more, and sadly there is no hard and fast rule. The exceptions that take the singular form, you just have to see them and learn them. This lecture is on capitalization rules. Capitalization rules for nouns. These can be divided into 2 main categories: the standard rules and all other places where capitals are used. Standard capitalization rules for nouns. The start of a sentence. So the first word in a sentence is always uppercase. Now the only real exception to this is brand names that start with a lowercase, for example eBay or iPhone. And if it bothers you starting a sentence with a lowercase letter, the advice I can give you is to restructure your sentence so that this brand name is not the first word in the sentence. So you can either put it, say, in a passive form. So instead of saying iPhones are expensive, you can say expensive phones include iPhones. There's that type of thing. And all proper nouns are uppercase. Tom, Jupiter, Wall Street, Buckingham Palace, Tuesday, June, New York. These are all just examples. Please refer to the lecture on common and proper nouns for more details. Now the first person pronoun I is always uppercase. It doesn't matter where it appears in the sentence. It's always uppercase, no exception. There are other places where nouns are capitalized. For instance, in letters and emails, in poetry, in titles and headings. We look now at letters and emails. So a letter or email generally starts like this. Dear Ms. Brown, comma, or not comma. Many thanks for your letter. Now the M in many is uppercase, even though it doesn't look like it's the start of a sentence. This is just a convention that is used. For informal mails or letters, you would say, "Hi Bob, did you also have a great time yesterday?" And again, the did starts with a capital letter by convention, even though it looks like it's not the start of a sentence. In poetry, especially traditional poetry, each line starts with a capital letter, irrespective of how the previous line was punctuated. So here's a classic example of a Valentine's poem. Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you. And we see there's only really one full stop, so it's one sentence, but because it's in a traditional poetry format, each line starts with an uppercase. Now in modern poetry, this convention is not always held. For those of you who like alternative versions of these poems, here's a couple for you. My favourite one is this last one. Roses are red, violets are blue. Some poems rhyme, but this one doesn't. And also in poetry and literature, the letter O is often capitalised as it's used as a form of address. So for example, in the Odyssey, "Tell me, O muse, of that ingenious hero who travelled far and wide." Capitals in titles and headings. There are several options for titles and headings. You can capitalise the first word only. So here it says titles and headings, only titles has a capital. You can capitalise every word, so titles and headings, each word has a capital letter. Or you can capitalise these significant words, as in this example, titles and headings. So titles, headings have capital letters, but little words like and, or, on, it, they would be left lowercase. The important thing is to be consistent. So if you're doing a group of headings, make sure you use the same format, and it doesn't really matter which one. I personally prefer the significant words, and that's what you generally see here. But again, don't mix and match randomly, keep it consistent within a document. This lecture looks at concrete and abstract nouns. Another way of dividing nouns is into concrete and abstract nouns. Concrete nouns are tangible things, things that you can see or touch or have some physical aspect. They can be common or proper nouns. They can be singular or plural. For instance, table, country, book, chairs, England, Lisa. Abstract nouns are intangible things, things that you cannot see or touch. They are more like concepts or feelings or ideas. For instance, love, hate, misery, fear, trust, knowledge. This short lecture looks at collective nouns. Collective nouns are nouns that refer to a group or collection of things, people, or animals. For example, a school of fish, a bunch of bananas, a flock of birds, or a flock of sheep, a band of musicians, a gang of thieves. Now there are many more collective nouns, these are just examples. Collective nouns are not the same as plural nouns. Collective nouns refer to a group of individuals which act as a single unit. So for example, an orchestra. Plurals just refer to a group of independent individuals. For example, musicians. To show an example with musicians and orchestra, you could say the musicians are playing well, but you would say the orchestra is playing well. Collective nouns are treated as if they were a single noun because they refer to a group. So for instance, a school of fish, a bunch of bananas, a flock of birds or sheep, a band of musicians, a gang of thieves. The short lecture is on countable and uncountable nouns. Nouns can be divided into countable nouns and uncountable nouns, and we use different words when we compare them. Countable nouns are individual items that can be separated and counted. So 1 chair, 2 chairs. A country, many countries. An apple, 12 apples. Uncountable nouns are items that cannot be separated and counted, and they have no plural form. For example, beer, milk, equipment, information. Now you may hear people going into a pub and ordering 2 beers, and they say, but you've said there's no plural form. But what the people are doing here is they're abbreviating 2 pints of beer or 2 glasses of beer as in 2 beers. And the things that are countable in this case are the pints or the glasses. The beer itself still remains uncountable. We can compare countable and uncountable quantities for equality. With countable nouns, we say as many as and as few as. With uncountable nouns, we use as much as and as little as. So, my sister has as many children as I do. That doesn't say whether it's lots or little, but the number is the same. It's countable. And John has as few books as Paul. Now in this case they have the same number, but by using as few it's an indicator that there's not very many. With uncountable nouns, Peter drank as much beer as James last night. Again, we're not sure how much it was, but it was probably quite a bit. Or Emma has as little patience as Jane. Again, they both have not much patience. With beer and patience, of course, being uncountable nouns. We can also compare countable and uncountable quantities for inequality. And in both cases, we use more than and less than. My brother has more children than my sister. So we don't know the exact numbers, but the brother has at least one more child than the sister. John has less books than Paul. Again, we don't know exactly how many each has, but of the two, John has less. That was the countable nouns for inequality. And if we look at uncountable nouns, we see Peter drank more beer than James last night. So we don't know how much they drank, but of the two, Peter drank more. Or Emma has less patience than Jane. Now this sort of implies that Jane hasn't got much patience and Emma has even less. That's just the way it's been formulated. This lecture is all about pronouns. Pronouns are words that are used in place of other nouns. They are used to avoid unnatural speech and repetition. They can be divided into definite pronouns and indefinite pronouns. As we said, pronouns are used to avoid unnatural speech and repetition. Let's have a look at an example sentence. John said that John was looking for John's hat. So John comes up 3 times, it's repetitive and it doesn't sound natural. We can change this through use of pronouns. John said that he was looking for his hat. Or if I'm John, I said that I was looking for my hat. And in all of the examples, you'll see that the pronouns are in bold italics. And this will be the case throughout this lecture. Definite pronouns replace specific nouns and can be further divided into subject pronouns, object pronouns, possessive pronouns, personal pronouns, reflexive pronouns, intensive pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, and interrogative pronouns. Subject pronouns replace nouns that are the subject in a sentence, and we replace a name to avoid repetition. The subject pronouns are I, he, she, it, we, you, they. Look at some examples. I am a teacher. The car is damaged and it needs to be repaired. We are hungry. You drank my beer. Object pronouns replace a direct or indirect object in a sentence or clause. The object pronouns are me, him, her, it, us, you, them. We'll look at some examples. You gave the book to me. I can't find it. Invite them to dinner tomorrow. Susie works for him. Possessive pronouns replace possessive nouns. They can be either the subject or object in a sentence or clause. The possessive pronouns are my, mine, his, her, hers, its, our, ours, your, yours, their, theirs. We need some examples. The bag is mine. It's my bag. Have you done your homework? This is our house. This house is ours. That is their car. That car is theirs. Personal pronouns are used to replace a person or people in a sentence. But they can also be used to represent animals, objects, or ideas. They can be the subject or object. Some examples. You drank my beer. He helped Susie with her coat. We will win the cup. My team is unbeatable. Reflexive pronouns. These are used in place of a person or a thing that is both the subject and object of the same verb. I think we need some examples to show what we mean. I saw myself in the mirror. We heard ourselves singing. So as we can see in both of these cases, the same person in the first one, I was the one who was doing the seeing and I was the one who was seen. In the second example, we were the people singing and we were the people who heard the singing. However, he heard ourselves singing is incorrect because there's a different subject and object. The subject is he
and we were the ones who were singing. Correct would be, he heard us singing. The full list of reflexive pronouns are myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself, oneself, ourselves, yourselves, themselves. And reflexive pronouns are never used as the subject. They only act as the object, and only when the person or thing has been used as the subject. So here are some incorrect examples. Myself saw me in the mirror. You can't do this. You have to have the reflexive part as the object. So correct would be, I saw myself in the mirror. Ourselves heard us singing. Again, we have to change this to we heard ourselves singing. Intensive pronouns are used to emphasize the subject in a sentence. They are not the object of an action. And they look very similar to reflexive pronouns that we've just seen. Some examples. I made that cake myself. Now I could just say, I made that cake. But by saying, I made that cake myself, it's emphasized the fact that I did it. You told me the location yourself. Again, we could just say, you told me the location. But in this particular case, it looks like something went wrong. And I'm saying, but you told me the location yourself. I mean, you told me. And the president himself wrote me a letter. So it emphasizes that the president wrote me a letter. Demonstrative pronouns are used to replace nouns that are close by, so this or these, or they're used to replace nouns that are far away, that and those. They usually require context to identify the nouns that they're replacing. So here are some examples. I made this cake myself. So the cake maybe is in my hand or just in front of me, and I can say this cake, the one near me. You will like these cookies. Again, I've probably got a plate full of cookies, and I'm talking about these ones. That is Susie over there. So Susie's not nearby, she's maybe on the other side of the room and you're pointing her out. I like those houses. Again, the houses are further away, so we use those, not these. Interrogative pronouns. These are used in questions to replace nouns. They can be the subject or object in a sentence or clause. They can be used in direct, indirect, or reported questions. The main interrogative pronouns are who, whom, whose, which, what. Some examples. Who is coming to the party tonight? That's a direct question. Could you tell me whose these are? Is the indirect question. And a reported question, she wants to know which is correct. And an indirect question to give emphasis, you're wearing what to the party? In other words, someone has decided that what they're going to wear to the party is not a good idea, and they're kind of emphasizing, you're wearing what? You will notice in the previous examples, there was no examples with whom. We'll just explain this quickly why. The difference between who and whom. So who is used for the subject in a sentence, and whom is used for the object. And there's an easy trick to decide which is which, is you associate who with he, and whom to him. so we see the M on whom and him. They match. So here's some examples. Who is coming to the party tonight? He is coming. To whom do these shoes belong? They belong to him. So the first example is he is coming, so we say who. In the second example, they belong to him, so we have to say whom. However, the use of whom sounds very archaic and old-fashioned these days, and strange. And linguists are in agreement that whom will probably disappear entirely within the next 100 years, and they will just use who for both cases. So they will say, who do these shoes belong to? And people say that now. So 100 years is probably quite a sort of a long estimate of the time it will take to disappear. It could be a lot shorter. Indefinite pronouns are placed in the same location as the noun it replaces. And they do not refer to a specific noun and can be formed with variations of any, some, every, and no. And we'll look at each of those in turn. Indefinite pronouns with any. These refer to indefinite and incomplete quantities and are used in questions where the answer is generally not known, and are used with not to emphasize negative sentences. So here's some examples. Do they have any children? Are you going anywhere nice on your holidays? She doesn't want any cake. She doesn't want anything to do with him. Indefinite pronouns with some. These refer to indefinite or incomplete quantities and are used in questions where you think you know the answer. They're also used in questions to ask for or offer something, and we'll see some examples. We drank some beer last night. We don't know exactly how many. Someone's been sleeping in my bed. Great quote from Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Are you going somewhere nice on your holidays? Would you like some tea? Definite pronouns with every. Refers to plurals, but are treated and considered to be singular. They refer to a group of people, things, or places. So the group is the singular part. Here are some examples. We can start. Everybody is here. Please note everybody is here, not everybody are here. We're talking the group, everybody. It will be a big party. Everyone is invited. Again, everyone is invited. They lost everything in the fire. I can't find my phone. I've looked everywhere for it. Definite pronouns with no. Again, refer to plurals but are considered singular. And they refer to an absence of people, things, or places. And here are some examples. She's very lonely. Nobody visits her. Again, it's singular. Nobody visits, not nobody visit her. We made all that food and no one came. No one here is spelt as two separate words. You can hyphenate the two, but please don't put them together. This town is dull. Nothing ever happens here. There was nowhere to park the car. Indefinite pronouns placement. So they are placed in the same location as the noun or nouns that they replace. And here are some examples to illustrate this. I won't tell Paul what you did. I won't tell anyone what you did. so the same location is used. He gave me a present. He gave me something. We bought the food there. We bought everything there. This lecture is all about possessive nouns. The possessive form indicates ownership. There are differing opinions on how to form the possessive. Possessives can apply to concrete and abstract nouns. Multiple owners need to be looked at closely, and they can refer to places by using the owner's name or functional title. As we said, the possessive form indicates ownership, and here are some examples. Susie's horse is the horse belonging to Susie. Paul's motorbike is the motorbike that belongs to Paul. And Mary and Mike's car is the car belonging to Mary and Mike. There are several opinions on how to form the possessive. There's the old-fashioned method and the modern approach. If we look at the old-fashioned formation first, we see that the rules are relatively simple. Add apostrophe S to the noun, so Susie's horse, Fred's motorbike. But if the word ends in an S, we just add the apostrophe, so Thomas' trousers, the bus driver. The modern possessive formation is more in line with the way in which the words are spoken. This only affects words ending in a letter S. And the letter S after the apostrophe is spoken more like a letter Z. So here's some examples. Thomas's trousers, the bus's passengers. An exception to the previous rule, and it's a bit awkward, is when the owners are plural and the plural form is formed by adding an S to the singular form. And we'll see some examples. The car's engines are tuned to perfection. If we'd have said the car's engines, it would sound really weird. Or the dogs ate the cat's food. If we said the dogs ate the cat's food, this would sound really odd and forced. And also please note here that dogs doesn't have an apostrophe because we're just talking about the plural form of dog. There's no possessive here. All other plurals are treated normally. For example, the children's book arrived today. The fish's tank is dirty and needs to be cleaned. Up until now, we've only seen examples with concrete nouns. But possessive forms can also apply to abstract nouns. And abstract nouns are things like feelings and emotions and ideas. And here are some examples. Jenny's mood isn't getting any better. John's integrity is above question. Susie's sense of humour is very dark. Paul's knowledge is impressive. With multiple owners, we need to look carefully. So if more than one person owns a single item, then only the last one in the list gets the apostrophe. So we say here, Mary and Mike's car. So it's one car and two people own it, namely Mary and Mike. If several people each have their own items, they all get the apostrophe. So say Paul's and John's shoes are black, so both Paul and John each own their own pair of black shoes. And we also use possessive formation to talk about places by using the owner's name or functional title. For example, I have an appointment at the doctor's tomorrow, and the doctor's here is used as a functional title. We're invited to the neighbours for drinks next week. Similar to the other example. Or using a name, Sir William Perkins's school is for girls between 11 and 18 years old, and the school is named after Sir William Perkins. Or Gino's makes the best pizza in town. So presumably Gino is the guy who makes the wonderful pizza, and his restaurant is called Gino's, and we use the apostrophe to show this. This is the lecture that concerns gerunds. Gerunds look the same as the present participle, and they use the ing verb form. Although they look like verbs, they're actually treated as nouns. They can be the subject in a sentence. It can be a direct object. They can be an object of a preposition. They can be a complement of the verb to be. And they can be used to form compound nouns. So gerunds look like the present participles of verbs, using the ing verb form. And here are some examples. Eating, swimming, painting. However, they are treated as nouns. And because a gerund is a noun, you can replace it with a pronoun. You can try replacing it with, for example, something or it. And gerunds also require a possessive form. So here are some examples. Swimming is good for you. Now, because it's a noun, we can say something is good for you or it is good for you. So that's good. Yep, it's a gerund. These are confusing instructions. These are something instructions or these are it instructions. No, that makes no sense. And this is because confusing here is not a gerund. It's describing the instructions. So in this case, confusing is an adjective. And adjectives cannot be replaced with a pronoun. And that's why the second sentence just looks and sounds odd. And because the gerunds require a possessive form, we say Peter's playing has improved a lot lately. Not Peter playing. It'd be Peter's playing. Gerunds, as we said, can be the subject in a sentence or clause. Here are some examples. Swimming is good for your health. Smoking is bad for your health. Reading is one of my hobbies. Eating too much will make you fat. Gerunds can be the object of verbs, preposition, and phrasal verbs. And here are some examples. I really enjoy swimming. Swimming is the direct object of the verb enjoy. Susie is very good at drawing. And here drawing is the object of the preposition at. I look forward to hearing from you. That is the object of the phrasal verb I look forward to. Gerunds and to be. They can be the complement of the verb to be. And here are some examples. One of my duties is attending meetings. One of my guilty pleasures is sleeping in late at the weekend. My favourite thing about Germany is drinking beer. My favourite thing about Japan is eating sushi. And in all of these examples, the is, or the conjugated to be, in this case is, and the gerund are shown in bold italic to make them clear. And because gerunds are nouns, they can be used to form compound nouns. So here are some examples. I'm having a driving lesson tomorrow. The working conditions here are terrible. Can I give you a helping hand? This lecture is all about compound nouns. Compound nouns are nouns consisting of two or more words for a single item, person, or place, and they mean something different than the individual words. The first part tells us the kind of object or its purpose. The last part tells us what the object or person is. Compound nouns have three different ways of being written. They can be a combination of many word types and are usually pronounced with the stress on the first syllable. Compound nouns consist of two or more words for a single item, person, or place and mean something different than the individual words. For example, bread bin. We know what bread is, and we know what a bin is. However, a bread bin is not a bin made of bread. It is a bin or container for storing bread. When we form compound nouns, the first part tells us the kind of object, person, or its purpose, and the last part tells us what the object or person is. Here are some examples. A blackbird is a bird that is black. A greenhouse is a house that is green. A washing machine is a machine for doing the washing. When we write compound nouns, we have three possible ways of writing them: open, closed, or hyphenated. Unfortunately, there are no rules for which form is used, and some compound nouns have more than one acceptable way of being written. So look at some open compound nouns, or sometimes called spaced compound nouns. And these are written as two separate words. For example, washing machine, water bottle, swimming pool, public speaking, driving license, bus stop, website. And closed compound or solid compound nouns are written as a single word. Boyfriend, toothpaste, haircut, rainfall, drawback, software, greenhouse, website, checkout. And hyphenated compound nouns are written with a hyphen between the words. Mother-in-law, check-in, check-out, check-up, take-off, passer-by. Compound nouns can be a combination of many word types. The most common forms are two nouns or an adjective and a noun. Many other combinations are possible. Look at some examples with two nouns. Boyfriend, water bottle, printer cartridge, bedroom, fish tank, football, handbag, tablecloth. And as we can see, the way of writing the compound noun is independent of the parts that form it. Look at some adjective noun combinations. Blackbird, greenhouse, redhead, mobile phone, hardware and software, six-pack, blackboard or whiteboard. And again, the writing form, whether it's open, close or hyphenated, is independent of the parts used. Look at some other combinations, and please bear in mind this is not an exhaustive list. We can combine a noun and a verb. For example, rainfall, haircut, train spotting. We can combine a noun with an adjective. Spoonful, cupful. Combine adjective and a verb. Public speaking, dry cleaning. We can make a verb and a noun combination. Washing machine, driving license. We can make compound nouns with verbs and prepositions. Lookout, drawback, makeup. Our preposition and a noun. Underpants, upstairs, onlooker. And again, I would like to emphasize that there are many other combinations that are possible. This is not an exhaustive list. When we pronounce compound nouns, they are usually pronounced with the stress on the first syllable. This enables us to distinguish between a compound noun and, for example, an adjective-noun combination. Here are some examples. A blackbird. Or as an adjective-noun combination, a black bird. A greenhouse. A greenhouse. Did you hear the difference between blackbird and a black bird? And when we form plurals of compound nouns, we usually form them by making a plural of the last part, using all the rules that apply to plurals. But there are some exceptions. If in doubt, use a good up-to-date dictionary and check it out for yourself. Here are some examples. Blackbirds, houseflies, full moons. So these three examples take the standard rule where the second part is made a plural using the normal rules of plurals. Some exceptions to this are, for example, mothers-in-law, passers-by, secretaries-general. And again, these are just some examples.
Hello, and welcome to this very short section on articles. So articles are the words that go before nouns. And we have the definite article and indefinite articles. And they are different. And we look at each one in turn. We show when to use them, and we give plenty of examples so you can really see what we mean. And we also have sort of like the null case where there's no article that goes in front of the noun. And this is a so-called zero article. And there's a lesson on that as well, explaining when we use a zero article, or more accurately, when we don't use an article at all. Again, with plenty of examples so you can see how this should be used. This lesson is on the definite article. There is only one definite article, namely the. It is used to identify a specific person, place, or thing. We also use the to refer to specific plural nouns. And we use the with superlatives. We change the pronunciation of the before words that start with vowel sounds. Let's look at some examples. We use the to refer to something which has already been mentioned, and we mean that specific one. There's a new position at work, the job will involve some overtime. So referring to a new position at work, and the job refers to that one, that job, the new position. Yesterday, an armed man robbed the shop. The thief has been caught. So, the thief is the armed man in the previous sentence. And we use the when we assume there is just one of something there, even if it's not already been mentioned. So, shall we go for a walk in the woods later? Now, in this case, we're assuming that you're not surrounded by dozens of woods. There's only really one you can go for a walk in. And our house is opposite the library. Again, you would expect just to be one library, and that's the one we mean. And we use the to identify a specific person or object. So this is the nurse who gave me my medicine. Not any old nurse, but this one, this nurse. We live in the house at the end of the street. So the house and the street, this specific house, this specific street. And we use the to identify unique people or objects. The sun rises in the east. There's only one sun in our solar system anyway. It's a beautiful day. There isn't a cloud in the sky. Again, it's just one sky up there. That's why it's referred to uniquely as the sky. We use the before superlatives. So Peter is the best swimmer in his class. There's only one best swimmer, so it's the best swimmer. Nana is the oldest person in our family. Again, only one oldest person, and this is her. And we use the when we talk about ordinal numbers. So Ian passed his driving test on the second try. This is the first time I've been to China. Now there are lessons on superlatives and there are lessons on ordinal numbers, so please feel free to check those out if you need, just to brush up on those. And we use the with adjectives to refer to a whole group of people. So the French are famous for wine and cheese. There are many special care homes for the elderly. And we use the with decades. There are some dreadful fashion mistakes in the 70s. His parents were born in the 60s. And we also use the with proper names of things like geographical areas, rivers, mountain ranges, islands, oceans, etc. Our cruise down the Nile was most enjoyable. Again, the River Nile in this case. Did Hannibal really cross the Alps with elephants? It is now possible to fly across the Atlantic in only a few hours. Our neighbours went to the Canary Islands on holiday. And we also use the when we're referring to famous buildings and works of art, museums or monuments. The Mona Lisa is on display at the Louvre. So again, we have two examples here. The Mona Lisa is a well-known work of art, and the Louvre is the building that it's on display in. The Washington Monument is an obelisk on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And we use the when we're talking about hotels, restaurants and pubs. So we're going to the Queen's Arms after work. Do you want to join us? Again, the Queen's Arm is presumably a pub, and that's where they're going after work. It's across the road from the Holiday Inn. That's describing where the pub is. And we change the pronunciation if the word after the starts with a vowel sound. So for instance, we wouldn't say the elephant, 'cause it's a little bit awkward with a the and then an elephant. So we say the elephant. Although we still write it with one E, we speak it as if it had two. So again, in this case, not the elephant, but the elephant. It just makes it flow easier. The orange. The SMS. But the unicorn, because although the word unicorn starts with a vowel, it doesn't have a vowel sound. So we have the unicorn, but the SMS. Because although SMS starts with a consonant, it has a vowel sound. This lesson is all about the indefinite articles. There are two indefinite articles in English, namely a and an. We use an when the word that follows the indefinite article starts with a vowel sound. And in all other cases, we use a as the indefinite article. And we use the indefinite article to identify a person or a thing that is unspecific or generic. And indefinite articles are only used before singular nouns. As we said, we use an when the word that follows starts with a vowel sound. And notice we said vowel sound and not vowel. If it's not a vowel sound, we use a. So we would have an elephant, but a big elephant. So it's not the noun after it, it's really the word after it. And we only say an elephant just to make it flow easier when we speak. If we had to say a elephant, it would be very sort of strange and awkward to say. A pair. An SMS. Because although SMS starts with a consonant, it has a vowel sound. A hotel. An hour. Now here we see they both start with an H, but in hotel, the word has a sort of a harder H to it, and in hour, it's got a vowel sound to it. So we say a hotel, an hour. And here we've marked this with a question mark and marked it as UK-US. Now in UK English, they would pronounce that word herb, presumably because there's an H at the start of it. So if it was an English speaker, they would say a herb. But for some reason, the Americans call it herb, and they would say an herb. And we use indefinite articles to identify a person or a thing that is unspecific or generic. Now, it's dark in here. Can you turn on a light? In other words, I don't really care which light. I'm not bothered, but any light will do. Not a specific light. I'm still waiting for an answer. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm waiting for it. There's an angry customer wanting to speak to the manager. Now here we have indefinite and definite articles. So there's an angry customer is indefinite. We don't really know who it is or what their problem is, but they want to speak to the manager. And in that shop, there's presumably only one manager. I'll take a message for you. I just need to find a pen. So I don't know what the message is. It's unspecified. And I don't care which pen. It's generic. So here we have a sentence with both cases. And we use the indefinite article for jobs, nationalities, and religions. Sam is a doctor. Peter is an electrician. And here we see electrician starts with a vowel sound, so we use an electrician. Pierre is a Frenchman. An Englishman's home is his castle. Sister Mary is a Catholic nun. Christianity is an Abrahamic religion, as is Islam. And we also use the indefinite article instead of the number one. If we wanted to, we could use the number one as well. It would also be correct. So for instance, at the market, you might say, I'd like a pound of apples and 4 lemons. You could equally as well say, I'd like 1 pound of apples and 4 lemons. This recipe is very sweet. It needs a kilo of sugar. I'm in a hurry. I can only stay for a minute. And this last example, for a minute, we don't mean literally 60 seconds. We just mean a short while. This lesson is all about zero articles. A zero article is the name we give where a noun is not preceded by an article, i.e. the, a or an. We use zero articles in generic plurals, uncountable nouns, proper nouns, abstract nouns, materials, and meals. We use them for generic plurals and uncountable nouns. Now, in the previous examples, we've always highlighted, say, the article or the adverb or the noun or whatever it is the lesson is about. I've put it in italics so it makes it easier to see. Now, of course, the zero article is nothing. There's nothing to highlight or put in italics. So what I've done in this particular lesson is I've highlighted the noun that doesn't have an article in front of it. Now, apples are supposed to be good for you. So a generic plural of apples, we mean apples, all apples, not specific apples. And elephants are big animals, not just specific animals, but generally speaking, elephants are big animals. So we use no article in this case. Dogs usually chase cats. Again, we're generalizing. Money makes the world go round. We're on an uncountable nouns now. Many people listen to music at the gym. So it's not a specific type of music, it's not a specific band, a specific group or person, it's just a generalization. Let's save time and drive during the night. Again, we're talking generally about saving time, not a specific amount of time. We also use zero articles with proper nouns. So, Kate saw Tom in town yesterday. Both Kate and Tom are proper nouns. Here you have to be a little bit careful because there are some languages where these cases of proper nouns do have an article, and a very common mistake you will see is they might say this as the Kate saw the Tom in town yesterday, if they literally translate from their language into English. And in English we don't use an article with proper nouns, so please be careful with that. Ken is from Hong Kong. Hong Kong is also a proper noun. Pierre speaks French at home. Sally intends to climb Mount Everest. Mars is closer to us than Saturn. Brenda was born in February. And in all of these examples you can see the proper noun is in italics and there is no article in front of them. We also use zero articles or no article with abstract nouns and materials. So beauty and truth are both abstract nouns. And by abstract nouns we mean it's nothing tangible. You can't, like an apple is a concrete noun because you can hold an apple in your hand, whereas things like beauty and truth are abstract. And there is, of course, a section on nouns, and there's a lesson in that on abstract and concrete nouns, so please feel free to check that out if you need a little bit more information on those. Honesty is usually the best policy. Envy is not an attractive quality. Now some material examples. The table is made of wood. Tubas are made of metal. Clarinets are usually made of wood or plastic. When we're talking about meals, we use no article, unless we're talking about a meal that also has an adjective. Sounds a bit odd, but we'll see some examples. A breakfast is the most important meal of the day. All breakfast, not a specific breakfast. Penny usually just has some fruit for lunch. I would like to invite you out for dinner this evening. And these are all examples where we have no article before the noun in italics. If we say Bob prefers to sleep longer and only has a quick breakfast, because breakfast has an adjective in front of it, we then add an article, has a quick breakfast. That was a very tasty dinner. We're talking about that specific dinner as well. There is, however, one exception to the previously mentioned rules about having no article with proper nouns, and I'll show you an example of it now. I met Tom Hanks yesterday, said someone. What, the Tom Hanks? No, my sister's new boyfriend is also called Tom Hanks. And we do use an article here as we want to ask about a specific person. So by saying, what, the Tom Hanks, it's like, what, that famous one who most people think of when they hear the name. So this is a small exception to the rule we previously had about when we can use an article with proper nouns, as in names of people. Hello, and welcome to this section on adjectives. So we use adjectives to modify nouns and pronouns. And these are really important words because they add useful information to a sentence. So for an example, if I were to say to you, the cat sat on the mat, I have a picture in my mind of what that looks like, and you have an image in your mind of what that looks like, but they're really not going to be the same because there's not any detail. So if I were to use adjectives, I could give you a far more detailed description, and I could say something like, the small tabby cat sat on the round green mat, and we both now have a much clearer picture of what we're talking about. And this is where adjectives come in. So this is a relatively short section. So we look at initially at different types of adjectives, again with plenty of examples. We look at comparing things that are equal with adjectives and things that are unequal, and then we look at superlatives. And finally, a quite important lesson is on the order of adjectives, and for instance why we would say a big blue bus and not a blue big bus. This lesson is on different types of adjectives. We can group adjectives into 6 common types, and these are descriptive, quantitative, demonstrative, possessive, interrogative, and distributive. And we'll look at examples of all of those now. Descriptive adjectives are probably the most common in use. And when you think of adjectives as things that describe nouns and modify nouns, the ones that usually spring to mind are these descriptive ones. For example, the dog is hungry. Tom is exhausted. Jill's paintings are amazing. Paul's a comedian. He's funny. The flowers are lovely and have a wonderful smell. Now, in this example, we can really see where adjectives are useful. If we didn't have them, we'd just say, flowers have a smell doesn't really tell us much, but saying they're lovely, have a wonderful smell gives us much more information. An even better example is this next one. The red sofa has green cushions with blue stripes. And you can really sort of picture that in your mind. If we didn't have the adjective, you just say the sofa has cushions with stripes. And you ask 10 people, you get 10 different ideas about what this sofa looks like. But with the adjectives, you get a sort of a similar idea because it tells you much more detail what it really looks like. So quantitative adjectives tell us about a number or a quantity. And they answer the question how many or how much. And just as a reminder, we use how many for countable nouns and how much for uncountable nouns. So some countable examples. 27 people are swimming in the pool. My brother has 3 children. Please go to the shops and buy 8 apples and 7 bananas. Or we have some with how much. I think your plants need more water. Did you really eat the whole cake? The old woman has many grandchildren. The demonstrative examples point out nouns or pronouns. And they always come directly before the word that they're referring to. And the 4 common demonstrative adjectives are this, that, these, and those. And they all have specific uses. So this and that are for singular items, and these and those are for plural items. And then this and these are for things close to us, and that and those are for things further away. So that gives us the 4. This is one thing close to me. That is one thing far away. These are many things close. And those are many things far away. And we'll see examples of those. So would you like this cake or that cake? So this cake is nearby or that one is over there. I would like to buy that shirt. That's someone pointing to a specific shirt over there. Why did you buy these pears? They're already rotten. So presumably you have them in the hand or close by in a basket. And I wonder who owns those horses. They're magnificent. So someone's seen some horses further away in a field and they're referring to those horses over there. Possessive adjectives show ownership or possession. So there are lots of them. So my, her, their, your, and our have to be followed by a noun. And the equivalent versions of those without a noun are mine, hers, theirs, yours, and ours. And as a small exception, his can be used both with and without a noun, as we will see. Whose bike is that? And the answer is it's my bike, or it's mine. Now, if you just use the first one without the noun, it's my, it is wrong, or it's mine bike is also wrong. So either it's my bike or it's mine. Peter sold his car to Susan. It's hers now. So in this first half of the sentence, his car, and then it's hers now. So the hers has no noun after it. If you think their house is grand, you should see ours. Again, their is from the group that has to be followed by a noun, and ours is from the group that doesn't. Your cake is delicious, so much nicer than mine. And again, your with the noun, mine without. And as you can maybe tell by the name, interrogative adjectives are used to ask questions. And they are what, which, and whose. And they are always followed by a noun. And this is important. So what film do you want to watch this evening? And here we see what followed by a noun. so it is an interrogative adjective. What do you want to do this evening is a very similar question, but the what is not followed by a noun, and so it's not an interrogative adjective. It's actually an interrogative pronoun, which is why it's not in italics. Which tie do you like with this suit? Do you know whose car that is? And there's examples of the three types of interrogative adjective in use. And distributive adjectives are used to single out one or more things, as nouns, pronouns, that type of thing. And common distributive adjectives are each, every, either, neither, and any. And again, they're always followed by a noun. So Linda wore a bracelet on each ankle. Every employee will receive a bonus this year. I don't mind what we watch. Either film is fine by me. Neither Bob nor Andy is qualified for the position. You can choose the music. Put on any CD you like. I hope you notice by the either and neither, we can pronounce them how you wish. You can either pronounce it either or either, and neither or neither. There's no preference, there's no one is correct, the other is incorrect. It's purely as you wish. The bride received each and every present on her wish list. This is a slight sort of exception to the usage here, because by using each and every, it emphasizes the fact that she received every single present on her wish list. And it's a fairly common expression that you would use when maybe talking to somebody, but you wouldn't use it in formal writing. This lesson in the adjectives block is about comparing equality for adjectives. So the comparisons can be positive or negative. And when we compare adjectives, we use the form as something as. And if two adjectives are not equal, we say not as something as. And we can use comparisons when asking questions. Let's look at some examples. When we compare adjectives, we use the form as plus adjective plus as. So as something as. Andy is as tall as his father now. Liz is as pretty as her sister. Bob is as passionate about films as Jim. And in the first case, we're comparing the heights of the father and son. In the second case, the looks of the sisters. And in the third case, what they think about films. And all has the same format as something as. Now the comparisons can also be negative. Steve is as tall as his mother, but he is not as tall as his father. Again, it's still the same as something as, just in a negative case it has a not in front of it. Jenny is as smart as her sister. She's not as smart as her brother. The new flat is as big as the old one. My old car is not as expensive as my new one. And we see some examples with positive and negative together. And we also use comparisons when asking questions. Do you think Susie is as pretty as her sister? Is your new house as big as your old one?
Is Paul as tall as you? Did you find Rome as interesting as Paris? Is your new sofa as comfortable as your old one? Are the sales figures as bad as predicted? And in all cases, the same format as, something as, but in this case using questions. This lesson is on adjectives and how we compare them when they're unequal. Comparisons can be positive or negative. And there are several different ways to form the comparative adjective. And we use comparisons when asking questions. Let's look at how we form the comparative. For short adjectives of 1 or 2 syllables, add er or r to the end. And if the word ends in a y, replace the y with an I before adding er. And words that end in a vowel plus a single consonant often double the consonant in the comparative form. But we'll see examples of all of these now. The film is long. The film is longer than I remember. So long is the adjective and longer is the comparative form. Sandra is pale. In comparison, Sandra is paler than her friend. And please note here that pale ends with an E, so we don't add an ER, we just add an R. John is funny. John is funnier than Andy. And here we see the example where funny ends in a Y and it's replaced with an I before the ER. The house is big. Your house is bigger than my house. This is an example where we have a vowel with a single consonant and we make 2 G's to make bigger. Fat goes to fatter and so on. And for adjectives with 3 or more syllables, we add more before the adjective. The dress is beautiful. This dress is more beautiful than that one. This car is expensive. This car is more expensive than the one I bought last year. If we try to say expensiver or beautifuler, it gets a bit unwieldy, and that's why after 3 syllables we just add a more in front of it to make the comparative. There are, of course, as is English, irregular versions. The comparative form of good is better. So here we see the example, Sarah is good at tennis. Sarah is better than her brother. And the comparative form of bad is worse. So Jim is bad at football. Jim is worse than Peter. Tony can run far. Tony ran farther than yesterday. Now some people use further, but the general consensus is to use farther for distances and further for sort of abstract concepts. And the comparative form of little is less. So Jenny ate little food in the morning. Jenny ate less in the morning than the evening. And the comparative versions of much and many is more. Let's look at some examples. When we compare unequal adjectives, we use a comparative form of the adjective plus than. So Andy is taller than his father now. Liz is prettier than her sister. Bob is more passionate about films than Jim. Your house is bigger than my house. And when we're comparing equality, we can have positive or negative, so it can be equal or it can be not equal. So Steve is taller than his mother. He is not taller than his father. Jenny is smarter than her sister. She is not smarter than her brother. The new flat is bigger than the old one. And my old car is not more expensive than my new one. And here we see the formation. In the positive we have comparative plus than, and then the negative form, not comparative plus than. I think it's quite straightforward. And we can use comparisons when asking questions. Do you think Susie is prettier than her sister? Is your new house bigger than your old one? Is Paul taller than you? Did you find Rome more interesting than Paris? Is your new sofa more comfortable than your old one? And are the sales figures worse than predicted? So in all of these questions, we see that the format is still the same. We use the comparative adjective plus than when asking our questions. This lesson is on superlative adjectives. We use superlative adjectives to compare 3 or more items. And there are several different ways in which we form the superlative adjective. And if the context is clear, we often omit the group when talking about superlatives. So how do we form this? Well, for short adjectives of only 1 or 2 syllables, we add est or st to the end of the adjective. If the word ends in a y, we replace the y with an I before adding est. And adjectives that end in a vowel plus a single consonant are often double the consonant when forming a superlative. We'll look at examples of all of these now. The film is long. The film is the longest one ever made. And because we're talking about only one, we usually use the in front of a superlative, so it's the longest. Sandra is pale. Sandra is the palest one on the beach. And because pale ends in an E, we only add an st to form a superlative. We don't add another E to it. John is funny. John is the funniest person I know. And because funny ends in a Y, we replace the Y with an I before forming the superlative, as we see here. That elephant is big. It's the biggest elephant I have ever seen. And this is an example where we have a vowel and a single consonant. And when we form the superlative, we make 2 G's out of big to form biggest. Similarly with fat is 2 T's to form fattest, and so on. Now for longer adjectives with 3 or more syllables, adding est would be unwieldy, so we add most in front of the adjective to form the superlative. The dress is beautiful. The dress is the most beautiful of them all. Well, this suit is expensive. This suit is the most expensive I have ever bought. If we try to say the dress is the beautifulest or the expensivest, it's unwieldy. That's why we use most in front of the adjective to form the superlative. And of course this is English, so there are some irregularities with superlative adjectives. So superlative of good is best. So Sarah is good at tennis.
Sarah is the best in the tennis club. Superlative of bad is worst. So Jim is bad at football and Jim is the worst in the team. Superlative of far is either farthest or furthest. Some people use them interchangeably. If you really wanted a distinction, you could say that farthest is used for measurable distances and furthest is used for more abstract concepts. So Tony can run far. Tony ran the furthest. And the superlative of little is least. So Jenny ate little food in the evening. Jenny ate the least food in the evening. And the superlative of much and many is most. And if the context is clear, we can omit the group when we're comparing. So all the brothers are fast runners. Tony is the fastest, implied of the brothers. But because it's clear we're talking about the brothers, we don't need to repeat it again when we're making the comparison. We all drank at the same time. Lenny drank the quickest. So if you imagine this 1, 2, 3, go, and they all try and drink the beer as quickly as possible, and Lenny was the one who finished first. So we all drank at the same time. Lenny drank the quickest of us. We don't need it again. And the whole team played well. Paul played the best. So in this case, the best of the team. So we don't need to repeat the team because it's clear from the context that that is what we're talking about. This lesson in the adjectives block concerns the order in which we use them. But when several adjectives are used to describe a noun, the order is not random. And if it's put in the wrong order, the sentence really sounds unnatural. And because native speakers have been hearing the correct order sort of all their lives, they instinctively get it right. But as a language learner, you won't have this experience available to you to fall back on. So here is the generally accepted order of adjectives. Okay, you might want to pause the video here to read them, but we'll see basic order starts with quantity, then opinion, size, quality, shape, age, color, material, origin, and purpose. And unfortunately, I know of no mnemonic which will help you remember those. Some people actually print the list out and stick it somewhere so they can see it. And it should point out it is very unusual to have more than 3 adjectives in a row. So we have a beautiful old Swiss clock, which is opinion, age, and origin. Opinion is beautiful. I think it's beautiful. It is old, and it comes from Switzerland. 12 shiny red apples. So 12 is the quantity. They're shiny, that's a quality adjective. And they're red, that's the color of them. Or a big brown wooden bridge. So it's size, color, and material. A lovely big metal frying pan. So actually we do have 4. So we have opinion, I think it's lovely. It is big. It's made of metal and it's used for frying, this pan. So we get a lovely big metal frying pan. And if we try to put those the wrong way around, any of them, they would really sound unusual. So if you said red shiny 12 apples, that just sounds so weird. Or 12 red shiny apples, it just doesn't quite sound correct. And I'm afraid you just have to accept this and try and get the order correct. Now, if we have 2 adjectives from the same group, we actually put an and between them. So we'll see what we mean here. The shop sells old and new books. So we have 2 from the age category, and we put an and in between. Or the blue and orange house. So we have 2 from the color category. Or we can have, of course, different categories as well. So our old black and white television. So we have an age and color. So we write it like this, our old black and white television. And another one with different categories, a big wooden and metal bridge. So we have size with 2 material groups. Now if we have 3 or more adjectives from the same group, we treat it almost like a list. And many adjective groups are not suited to this type of use. So if we had, say, shape, you couldn't describe something as being round and triangular and rectangular and flat. It just doesn't make sense. But groups like color and material does make sense, as we'll see. So the red, white and blue house. So red, white and blue all come from the color group, and we treat it like a list, red, comma, white, no comma, and blue. And if we have other groups with it, we'll have the big old wooden, plastic and metal bridge. So old, or big and old come from different groups. So we just have that with blanks as usual, and then the wooden, plastic and metal we treat like a list. We have the big old wooden, comma, plastic and metal bridge. So no comma between big and old and wooden, and none at the end before and. It might look a bit strange, but it is the way it's used. If you read lots of books and things, you will see that this is how it's used.